I'm out on this walk with Peanut and I just realized that I'm wearing my golden retriever sweater. I'm a little embarrassed, not gonna lie. It's done. Oh my gosh, I finally finished it. 6 gouache miniatures.
So home again by water with much pleasure. So they've obviously been falling out.
You know, this reminds me a lot of that one Georgia O'Keeffe painting that's hanging up in the Chicago Art Museum, the one of the clouds. Wow. That was a very steep trail. Oh my gosh. My hiking shoes are really putting in the work.
This is my wife. She's so hot. Look at her walk, so good. She's so beautiful. She's so smart.
I'm back. It's been a while. I can't honestly remember the last time I sat down and filmed anything. As cringy as these videos are, I do find it really rewarding to get my life on video and take stock of everything. So I'm gonna try my best to keep up with myself, but sometimes life just gets in the way, you know? I have this enormous mug of tea that's bigger than my head. I've also got wet hair, so please excuse. I have no idea what this shirt is gonna look like on camera. I know my phone really struggles with stripes, but today, one of my very close friends is defending his PhD thesis, and he's requested that everyone wear blue and pink. So I'm going with blue because I don't own a lot of pink. April was such a wild month for me. It was really fun. I did a ton of stuff. I traveled, I worked really hard, I played a lot, I painted my ass off. Overall, I had a ton of fun, and I'm really excited to recap it and relive it here for you. So let's see, first week of April, I went to a pottery class with Eric and his sister Kelly, and we made little mugs. And, oh, actually, I just got back these mugs. Let me show you what I made. Okay, so I made a chicken mug. She's a little hen. I think I'm gonna use this as a little plant pot. I think that'll be really cute. So that one's mine. And then Eric's is a little bit of a tragedy, but this is like a big barn. And originally he had all of these different animals, but unfortunately, I think because they dipped his into blue glaze and mine was like a clear glaze, for some reason, the blue just like washed everything out. A lot of the markings are gone, and maybe he just didn't carve them deep enough, but the only animal that survived is this cat. I still think it's very cute. It's a fun piece. We now call it the Big Blue Barn mug because that's what it is. It's a big blue barn. And then for most of April, I was really caught up in this art project that I'd been thinking about and planning for quite a while. It's a series of small gouache paintings, little 6x6 miniatures that are inspired by different scenes and sights from the neighborhood that caught my eye during my daily dog walks. I made a reel about this for my Instagram that I'll probably just insert here because it explains the idea behind the project and what I was trying to do with it. When you own a dog, you become very familiar with your neighborhood. You walk down the same streets every day, rain or shine. You stop for potty breaks on grassy medians, pause next to smelly fire hydrants, and while you wait for your little friend to explore the world through her senses, you can't help exploring through yours. April in St. Louis is so beautiful. The dogwoods bloom, the lawns turn green, the mellow golden afternoons are finally warm enough for short sleeves. I made the series of paintings to collect these moments, to hold each balmy spring day in my hand. Each one is a piece of sunshine filtered through foliage, birdsong over a sighing breeze, cool blue shadows stretching over warm pavement. There is something special about this little piece of the world I've chosen to be my home, and I want to share it with you. I made it mostly just for funsies. I think short form content is just not my thing. They're just really difficult to make. For some reason, it's much easier for me to just sit and record and edit a long form video for YouTube than it is to try to make something snappy and entertaining that fits into a minute. And then, let's see, April 15th, Eric and I went to go see Swan Lake performed by the World Ballet Company here in St. Louis. And that was incredible. It was an amazing performance. I thought the dancing was excellent. I thought the costumes were gorgeous. The stage designs were beautiful. The live score was incredible. I think Swan Lake just has the most iconic music to me. Well, I don't know a lot of ballet scores, but I love Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake. For some reason, I feel like the main theme just reminds me so much of the Harry Potter theme. I think it's called Hedwig's theme. I mean, what's not to like, So I really enjoyed it. The last week of April, we went on a family trip to Utah. We visited all 5 national parks in Utah. We also went to a couple state parks and the Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument. We went with a group of, I want to say 16 people plus 2 guides. And we spent most of the days just hiking in the daytime. We would go out for a picnic lunch, then come back and have dinner at our hotel. And every place we stayed was just wonderful. Eric and I have traveled with this group before, again, being invited along by his parents, which is, just so wonderful of them. And it's such a privilege to be able to do this together. The parks are beautiful, and I was really surprised by how different the parks were from each other. And prior to the trip, I think I would have ranked the desert as being quite low on my list of natural scenery that I personally find very beautiful. I think I'm much more of an alpine appreciator, but somehow this time around, just going with these wonderful people and just really getting to know the parks and exploring them and having guides there to teach you about the environment and just being immersed in it in this way, I felt like I came out of this trip having completely changed my mind about the desert and a lot more appreciative of just how outlandish and strange and wonderful and beautiful the scenery was. And currently I am working on a 12-piece series of gouache paintings inspired by the Utah trip, which is just a ton of fun. I feel like as I'm working on these pieces, I get to relive and re-experience that trip in my head. So it's very meditative for me to make these little paintings. I'm really addicted to gouache right now. And I think it's really funny that it's taken me this long to open up my kit and start using it. I don't know why I was so afraid to try out this new media. It is just as easy and fun and intuitive to use as people made it seem. So I'm really glad I just got over my fear and started working on this. Oh, speaking of, so the first gouache piece I made was a little portrait of Eric and Peanut Butter sitting on the couch. And I immediately ruined it because I sprayed acrylic fixative on it. And I didn't know that you can't spray gouache with anything that's water-based or wet because the pigment will just lift off of the paper. And I feel like I remember being told to spray watercolors with this fixative before, so I was really surprised and just devastated when that happened. I sprayed it in the evening And then I came back in the morning and all of the color had just washed off. So yeah, lesson learned. I'm glad I figured that out before I went and sprayed anything else, because it was just a practice piece, so it's all right. The purpose of the fixative is it's like UV protectant, and I know gouache is not the most, what is it called, light fast or something? It will fade if exposed to UV light, and I haven't quite figured out a way to display my gouache pieces without fear of sun damage. They're also very moisture sensitive, as I've learned, so definitely a much more fragile media than acrylic, which I never really had to worry about before. I used to just like slap on like UV resistant varnish on all of my acrylic paintings and just call it a day. So currently the dog walk series is just hanging up in my kitchen with like an acrylic sheet that's supposed to be UV protecting on top of it, but if you know of a better way, please let me know. How to store gouache paintings long term. Anyway, back to the Utah trip. So we flew into Moab in Utah. We stayed there for 2 nights, and from there we visited Canyonlands. It's really hard for me to say. Canyonlands. Then we went to Arches National Park, and then we drove to Boulder, Utah, and I think along the way we stopped by Capitol Reef. And then we visited the Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument. And while we were in Boulder, we stayed at this place. Oh, I don't remember what it's called exactly, but it's attached to a restaurant called the Hell's Backbone Grill. And that was a really amazing place. So we were able to eat there 2 nights in a row. And we also had lunches and breakfasts catered by that restaurant. I think they've won like a bunch of James Beard awards, and they're very well known for like super fresh farm to table food. And the story of the restaurant is actually kind of incredible because Boulder, Utah is a super out of the way place. And while we were there, Kelly and I both bought the cookbooks that they make. So let me show you. So I have the first cookbook that they printed, and then Kelly has their second cookbook. So between the two of us, we've got a complete set of all of their published recipes. This one is called With a Measure of Grace, and I think hers is called This Immeasurable Place, and they do sell these online. But the reason why I got this, partly because of the recipes, because the food was delicious, but also because the cookbooks contain a lot of stories about the founding of the restaurant, their like ethos. There's profiles about different workers and different animals on their property, and it's all really interesting. So the restaurant opened in the spring of 2000, and the Grand Staircase Escalante region had just been declared a national monument in 1997. So I learned that at the time, the local community, which is mostly made up of Mormon farmers, were really anti-tourism, and they were actually quite dismayed by the fact that the Grand Staircase Escalante region had just become protected land, because they felt like the influx of tourism was super disruptive to both the local economy and to their ways of life. And so when Blake and Jennifer opened their restaurant, they really had to work closely with the town council and the local residents in order to get their liquor license, without which they felt that a restaurant catering mostly to tourists would just not be able to survive economically. And there are quite a few like really interesting stories in here about how Blake and Jen were able to convince the locals that they came in good faith and had these initiatives to employ the local people, to create jobs for the community, to source from the nearby farms, and really integrate themselves within what was already existing there. And I felt like it was just a beautiful story, and clearly it's been a huge success. And I read in Kelly's book, so not in mine, but in the second cookbook, there's a piece about how Boulder, Utah is so out of the way that it was really challenging to find workers. and then also to house the workers. So in the early days, outsiders who came to work in the restaurant would just camp for a summer. So the restaurant itself bought a 5-bedroom property that they use as like a worker dormitory, and they still own it and they still use it as transitional housing for employees before they're able to find a more permanent residence, which I thought was just a super interesting story and just really wonderful insight into the challenges and unique quirks of running a restaurant in this kind of location. Anyway, the food there was amazing. I highly recommend if you're ever in the area. One couple that we traveled with, I think they live in St. George, and they said that during COVID, they just like ran out of stuff to do. So they drove like hours and hours to go eat at Hell's Backbone Grill because it was open during COVID and they had outdoor seating. And they said it was worth the trip. So yeah, we were really lucky to be able to meet Blake, one of the owners, and she signed my book for me. It says, "For beautiful Julia and Eric with friendship and goodness" on May Day. But yeah, what an interesting experience, and just something I would never have known about had it not been for this random tour taking me to this out-of-the-way place. I am really excited to make the recipe for what's called like dark magic gingerbread or something. I had this dessert both nights in a row. It was so good. It was like gingerbread, but in a brownie texture. Just delicious and gooey, dense, dark, rich, and it came with like candy ginger pieces on top. So good. But I do think that is more of like a fall winter recipe, so I'm gonna wait a little bit. So let's see, after we left Boulder, I think we went to Bryce next, and we stayed at the Bryce Canyon Lodge inside the park, which is such a treat. I think the lodge is by the same architect as the Yosemite Lodge, which we ate at last year, but we didn't stay there. And then we went to Zion and we stayed just outside the park in a really nice hotel. And then we had lunch inside the Zion Lodge, which is again by the same architect. I forget his name. I can look it up. And yeah, that was the trip. Lots of hiking, lots of photo taking. We went with a group of mostly retirees, so the hikes were not super strenuous, but I was honestly surprised by how much walking we managed to do. I think we were hitting like 15 to 18,000 steps every single day. So definitely a lot more activity than I normally do. And I came out of it super tired and feeling like my cardio had improved. I loved the people we were traveling with. It's always super fun to travel with retirees. I feel, I don't know, something about being around much older people who you wouldn't normally interact with on a daily basis. People who've lived entire lives and just like experienced so much. And they're just super well traveled and have tons of stories. And the two guides this time were also older women. So one was in her, I think, mid to late 50s, and the other was turning 70, I think, which is incredible because I would have never guessed. They both were so young for their age and just like lifelong adventurers. They are tour guides for all of the national parks in the US. One woman is a retired paramedic, and I think her husband is still working as a paramedic. The other guide was a yoga instructor. She ran marathons when she was younger. She told us about running, I think it was the Portland Marathon, or maybe one in Montana. They're both from Bozeman, Montana. And she was telling us that she ran one with a stress fracture in one of her shins for almost the entire race. And she just like didn't even clock it because she had so much adrenaline going. And then after the race, she went to go see a doctor, and he told her that her leg was like broken. There's just something really healing about being around older people, particularly older couples whose marriages have survived like 30, 40 years. Anyway, that was the trip. I feel like I'm forgetting so much more. Oh, we also did a ton of gardening. We completely transformed the front yard. We dug out what was there previously. We took down the tree that was growing in the middle of the yard. I think we're going to replace it with a different species. I'm thinking either a magnolia tree or an eastern redbud, one that kind of grows in like a clump with lots of little trunks instead of like one big one, if that makes sense. I think they're called clump trees. I think that is like the actual horticultural term. I don't quite remember. Cluster? It could be a cluster tree. We put in like little hedges along the house and then another row of spirea bushes in front of it. And currently we have annuals growing like all along the front lawn, but unfortunately I think the rabbits are eating them, and it was a bit too expensive, I think, to be doing every year because it's just so much ground to cover that when you buy, that many flowers, it doesn't seem like it's going to be a lot, but $5 per pot really does add up quickly. So I'm not sure if I want to keep doing this every year. I think next spring I'm going to clear out some of that and replace it with hydrangea bushes. We also filled in the garden beds in the backyard, which was an insane amount of work. We got, I think, 3 cubic yards of soil, which turns out to be like over 7,000 pounds, which is kind of insane. And we just like carried it down from the truck by hand with a wheelbarrow. And my only job was to rake the beds after they dumped the soil in it so that it would be like flat and have more space for like dumping more. And my arms were so tired by the end of that day. It felt like my body was just gonna break into a million pieces. Like if you think about it, like the rake itself is almost 10 pounds. And you're basically just doing like hundreds of reps of rows for like your maximum weight without stop for like an hour. And I was so sore afterwards. I have no idea how Jordan is able to do that as his job. I mean, I'm sure like you build up strength, and he is like a super strong guy. And he also has like power tools in his day-to-day, so he doesn't have to be like doing that much physical labor all the time. But it was just so eye-opening. I was like, that job is so hard. And I wasn't even the one lifting the soil, I was just raking it. Anyway, the backyard is definitely a work in progress. We are hoping to work more on it this weekend. It's been really rainy, and we also have to paint the porch railing, which we got like a primer coat down, but we haven't painted it yet. So yeah, tons of house stuff still to do, but I'm really excited. Okay, I think I have blabbed on for long enough. I need to go and do other stuff. It was really fun to catch up, and hopefully I will do a better job of staying up to date from here on out. So last month I signed up for I think it's a 16-week figure drawing course at a place called Gateway Art Atelier here in St. Louis. So my first class starts tomorrow evening, and I was supposed to come and tour the studio before the session started, but I just never had time. So it's the last day to tour before the class starts. So I'm going to go there probably at lunch today, or either right before lunch or sometime after work if I can, and just go see the studio and figure out if I need to get like supplies for myself or if they'll provide supplies. I'm not entirely sure what's going on with that class, but I'm really excited to start. It's every Tuesday evening for 3 hours, and it goes for 16 weeks. So I believe it's 16 weeks. Yeah, it's a pretty big commitment, and I'm very excited to get started. So back at the beginning of April, I really wanted to treat myself to something that wasn't material. I wanted to spend money on experiences rather than things for a change. So what that meant for me was signing up for this figure drawing class, and then also signing up for the New York Review Books, NYRB. Is that what it stands for? New York Review Books? Why does that not make sense? Anyway, it's the NYRB Reading Club. So they're supposed to send me out a book per month. They are a publisher, and they carry a lot of lesser known authors. I think their selection is very curated, and I've really enjoyed some of the NYRB titles and authors I've read in the past. I was actually inspired to do this after reading Angel by Elizabeth Taylor. And I don't think many publishers out there still print Elizabeth Taylor. I'm not super knowledgeable about NYRB as a publishing house, but from what it looks like, I think, the picks that they've choose for their monthly book club do all tend to really appeal to me. They seem like books I would enjoy, so I decided to go ahead and sign up for it. I also went and bought Stoner by John Williams, which for whatever reason seems to be being promoted pretty heavily by a lot of indie bookstores lately. Like I've seen it on out on tables. I think it's 20th century. It's about a professor in Missouri and his family career struggles. I'm not super sure. I haven't read it yet. I was supposed to receive the book club books about 4 to 6 weeks from the time I signed up. I think it's been about that long, and I still haven't seen anything come in the mail. So I'm gonna check up on it, I think, just to make sure they have the correct address and whatever. I have done this before. I literally just did this. I just ordered a book off Amazon to my previous address. So it's not outside the realm of possibility that I have to sign up for the wrong house. I know books are technically things, but you know what I mean, right? I'm signing up for the experience of having someone tell me what book to read, to be reading this book as a collective with everyone else who is part of the reading club, whatever, you know what I mean. I have been eating this for lunch nearly every day for 2 weeks now. It is my current fixation food. I'm obsessed with this combination. So this is sourdough toast. I'm using the sprouted wheat sourdough, I believe it's called, from Trader Joe's. And then it's avocado topped with some of this sprout mix, mozzarella cheese, this bruschetta spread. It's made with roasted red peppers, and I got this at one of those very cute but very expensive Italian delis here on the hill. I am such a sucker for the packaging, and I always want to try these things, but I mean, this little jar was, I think, $12.99. Not sure if I will get this exact thing again, but roasted red peppers, I mean, they're delicious. And then finally, this hot sauce, which has been heavily advertised on Instagram. I'm sure you have seen this brand somewhere. Unfortunately, I must report that this is actually delicious and worth every penny. Eric and I are flying out to New York tonight for my birthday trip, and I'm super excited. It's been a really hectic week, so I haven't really given this trip a lot of thought, and suddenly it's here, and we're flying out this evening, and I'm trying to pack really quickly. It's just a really quick trip. So I plan to pack extremely lightly. We want to be as mobile as possible, so I'm just fitting everything into my backpack instead of bringing a carry-on. I'm really planning, my travel outfit. I'll probably bring a clean shirt to come back in for Sunday, and then Saturday I will just wear something nice because we have a lot of events planned. I don't remember if I've already recorded this bit, but basically for my birthday this year, Eric wrote me a card with an itinerary, and it's basically said we're flying out on the 16th. I think today's the 16th, and then we're going to see the Book of Mormon, which is a musical, as a matinee showing on Saturday, and then we're going to get dinner. We have dinner reservations, and then after dinner we're going to go see a ballet. I don't know who is performing it. I think NYCB. It could be something else, but anyway, so it's 2 shows in a day. We want to maximize the use of our time there, and I don't know, I was just really blown away. I knew he was planning something because he was being very secretive on his computer. And I knew that he was using his tax returns on a birthday present for me, but I didn't know the extent of all the planning until I saw the birthday card, and I was just really, really blown away. Okay, I'll stop being so cheesy because he might watch this and I'm embarrassed. But yeah, honestly, possibly one of the most incredible things anyone has ever done for me for my birthday, and I thought last year's was hard to top. And I mean, honestly, it's not I don't live for grand gestures, and in fact, I don't really take my birthday very seriously at all. It kind of pains me when people are too nice, because I personally just have such a hard time thinking of stuff to do for other people when it's their birthday, and I just feel whenever people treat me really, really nicely for my birthday, it just sets an impossibly high bar. But I was just so touched that he you know, like went out of his way to plan a weekend around my interests, not just like gifting me something material, but really thinking about all the stuff I've just like mentioned offhand about how I want to see like a musical, I want to see the Book of Mormon specifically, and how much I love ballet. And you know, he's already surprised me once with the Swan Lake tickets, which that was an incredible experience. Okay, anyway, I'm gonna stop yapping. I really needed to pack. I'm going to show you very briefly what I'm bringing with me. This is basically everything I'm planning on bringing, not the socks. I'm gonna wear these on the plane, but it'll all fit into my backpack. So I've got my toiletries, makeup, some of this is Eric's, and then I am bringing my linen wrap skirt for Saturday. I have a choice of 2 tops. One will be for Saturday and one will be for Sunday brunch. Haven't really decided. I mean, they're basically the same thing. And I think I'll carry this separately, and it'll just have my my wallet, my headphones, my airplane gadgets for entertainment, my snacks, and I'm currently reading Stoner by John Williams. I've just started this. I've debated bringing this versus bringing my e-reader, but I think I'm going to just take a chance on this and just assume I will like it and won't be too inclined to change to a different book. I don't have a ton going on my e-reader right now. I'm currently in the middle of this super long and honestly agonizing sci-fi book called Seven Eves by Neil Stephenson. The premise is like the moon blew up, and because of that, the earth will, like life on earth will get annihilated. It stresses me out so much, so I'm slogging my way through Seven Eves. Anyway, that's my very long-winded explanation for why I don't feel like bringing my e-reader. We're both wearing our glasses. I got this set of magnets from the Frick collection in New York, and I think they're so fun. They are a pair of portraits of Thomas More on the left and then Thomas Cromwell on the right, both by Hans Holbein the Younger. I didn't know anything about the Frick collection, but I was very excited to see both of these because I am just the biggest Wolf Hall fan. It is so cold in my house. I'm making some tea right now. I've been really into drinking milk tea at home. It's pretty early right now, and I'm just trying to get some painting done before I head into work. I want to show you the 2 paintings that I made from the Utah trip. So this is the first one that I made, and it's just a little desert landscape. This was the second one I made. I just really love the way the shadows from the clouds will pass over the land underneath it. I saw so many instances of these like patches of shadow from the clouds above, and I found them really interesting. So here is one of a little butte that's all in shadow. I guess I'll also show you a little bit of my current setup. So for a while I was painting on the dining room table, but it's a very nice table. It's handmade by Eric's dad, and I just don't feel as comfortable doing anything messy. I was using a little kitchen towel to catch any spills, but you just always run the risk of spilling a bunch of water when you're painting, so I felt not super comfortable. So I ended up buying this little drafting table off Amazon. It's got a raised surface that kind of folds up and down like so. Peanut Butter is being a little bit crazy. She's chewing her bone very, very loudly, and she's doing this thing where she runs up the stairs and she drops her bone and it just falls all the way down the stairs, and then she goes and chases it. It is so overstimulating to be in this house with her when she's like that. But there are only so many things she can do to entertain herself, so I will allow it. She heard me saying her name and she brought her bone over here so she can chew it right next to my feet. I tape my watercolor papers directly to this surface. I will say it's just a teeny bit cramped. It's a very tiny, very, very tiny desk. It's like this wide. So just barely enough surface area to fit everything I need. I've been using these Strathmore artist tiles. I also have these smaller 4-inch squares. I'm honestly not entirely sure what I'm going to use these for. In my head, I was going to make miniatures this size, but you know, these might be just a touch too small. I might use them for little studies. And the paints I've been using are these Holbein washes. So Eric bought me a set of Winsor & Newton designer gouache, but I just got a little bit anxious about the like UV stability of those paints. And I figured, you know, just in case I end up making something I really, really like, I should probably just shell out for nice paint. I have never ever regretted buying like high quality art supplies. This was definitely on the pricier end, but I'm so glad I got these. I do not have any complaints about this paint quality. I think it is just so easy to work with, and the fact that I'm making very small paintings means I don't go through paint very quickly. So I'm less inclined to splurge on acrylics, for example, because I go through, you know, tubes and tubes of paint when I really get going. But when I'm making these miniatures, so what I've been using is this IKEA dinner plate. It's a tempered glass plate, and I've used this as my palette. When they dry out, they dry into these hard little lumps, and it's actually pretty hard to get them off the plate. So when I rinse off the plate, it doesn't take the cakes off, it just takes the blended colors, and then I'm able to have like a nice clean palette. I don't remember when I got these brushes. I think they're just like standard Blick, like very budget brushes, but I love these. And a couple of them have seen me through like almost a full decade of painting. That's my setup. And I just sit here. I have my reference photo on my iPad mini. I got a little LED light. That is my setup, and I think I'm just gonna start painting. So Eric and I just got back from New York. We went there this weekend for like a birthday trip for me because my 32nd birthday was this Sunday. And I just had such a fun time. But honestly, I'm very like happy to be back home because I have never been in New York City when it was warm out. And I think something about the cold just makes it more bearable to be around that many people. We took bus and subway in and out of LaGuardia. I've also never taken public transit in New York City before. I know, it's insane. I literally walked from Soho to Williamsburg by myself alone at night because I just didn't want to take the train. Central Park was so crowded. It was the most numerous. What am I trying to say? It was the most crowded park I have ever seen in my life. And something about it being a park, which you don't normally think of as being very crowded if you're from the burbs like me, is just like super jarring in a way that crowded streets are not. Like, I'm fully prepared to see a very crowded city. It just is a lot more jarring when there are like 3 separate baseball games going on at the same time within 50 yards of each other, and every inch of grass is being taken by like a family with a picnic blanket. We were staying at the Ameritania in Midtown. We went mostly to see the Book of Mormon, which unfortunately was canceled due to a theater fire. But that was totally fine because we ended up going to the Frick Museum instead with that time. It was a matinee showing, and we were gonna go see the ballet. And so Midtown was kind of the right place to be because it would be within walking distance of all the theaters. Saturday morning, we got up pretty early and then we went and got coffee and pastries at Cafe Aroma. So something that I noticed while I was there, I found that like a lot of the little cafes and bagel shops were stocking the same exact things, you know, same pastries, same sandwiches, and I feel like they're all being supplied by the same like supplier. So to the point where I was almost kind of like sussed out. Like I wasn't sure if the 2 bagel shops we went to were actually 2 separate entities or if they were secretly owned by the same person, because it seemed like they had a little bit of a rivalry going on, but when you go inside, their offerings are so similar. I wasn't sure what was going on, but we went to Liberty Bagels on Saturday and then we went to Broad Nosh Bagels on Sunday, both in Midtown, both slightly tourist trappy, which honestly I'm kind of into. And honestly, they were both so good. I have no complaints. I think the bagels were the highlight for me, and Eric agreed. I think of the things we ate, those felt the most special and most unique to New York City. Saturday evening, we went to a place called Sempre Ogi, which is a modern Italian place. And I mean, it was good. It was fine, but there are so many just delicious Italian places right where I live, within walking distance of my house. So I am definitely very spoiled for Italian, and I'm always comparing these places to like my favorite places in St. Louis. And I just wish more people could come here and experience how nice it is here. I feel like I have been evangelizing about St. Louis for so long that the City Tourism Bureau or something really needs to come and pay me for all the lip service I'm doing constantly. I'm back. Brief interruption. I had to go clean my palette. But do you see what I mean? This is what's left after I rinse it off in the sink. And all of the little cakes are still intact, so I can still use it. I really loved going to see the Frick collection. I saw my first Vermeer ever, I think. I don't know if I've ever seen a Vermeer in person. They were so much smaller than I thought they would be and a lot more dark and cool toned. So I had a book growing up of Vermeer paintings, and the print quality of the book is just, I mean, it's okay. It's a pretty old book. And for some reason in my head, Vermeers were very like faded, very soft. And seeing those two in real life, I realized that actually the contrast is a lot higher than I thought. I think my favorite painting that I saw was the girl that's like kind of like doing like something weird with her arm, and then she's got like a little flower. She's wearing blue, she's in front of a mirror, and it's a painting by Inez. Oh, I'm so terrible at remembering things like this. But that painting, it like stopped me in my tracks when I saw it. There's just something so arresting about the way the background is done. Like the sharp, clean lines, the reflection of her back, and obviously like the dress, the folds, the material feeling of that painting. It was just so cool to see in real life. Also much larger than I thought it would be. And I also really liked the Whistler portraits. There's just something about it. So most of the Frick collection, I would say, are portraits, which personally I really love seeing portraits in a museum. I love looking at people from like a different time period and just observing what they're wearing and their expressions and the types of things that they chose to be painted with. You know, there are all kinds of like details about people's like professions and their hobbies, and the accessories that they chose to make themselves look a certain way, I think is always really interesting. I am just such a sucker. Like, you know when they say that society portraits are done to impress people? I'm people. I'm super impressed by society portraits with like shining jewels and miles of satin. There was a special collection going on of Gainsborough portraits. And that's actually how I found out about the Frick collection. I saw an Instagram ad for the Gainsborough exhibit, and I decided I wanted to go see that after Eric told me that the matinee had been canceled. But I mean, personally, I just thought they were okay. There's something very strange about the anatomy in the Gainsborough portraits, and I was surprised that there was nothing to comment on it. Like people's heads were so large. Their shoulders were really strangely narrow, and I couldn't tell if this was like intentional. I learned that Thomas Gainsborough would paint portraits in exchange for music lessons, which I think is really cute. There was a painting of a Pomeranian with a puppy, and the little placard said that he painted this to gift to the owner in exchange for viola lessons or something like that. I really wanted to find a good used bookstore while I was in New York City, but I just think the place that we stayed at in Midtown, it wasn't very close to, like the type of bookstore I wanted to go to. We did go visit to like antique rare booksellers, but of course I'm not in the market for like an $18,000 first edition. I saw a really pretty edition of Omar Khayyam's The Rubaiyat, and it was bound in leather. It had this golden debossed peacock on the cover. Really, really pretty. And I think it was being sold for $3,200. But funny enough, I ended up getting a book at the Frick Museum gift shop of all places. I picked up a copy of Edith Wharton's New York Stories. Yeah, so I got this. I think it's quite special to pick up stories by my favorite author set in her favorite city, and I'm very excited to read these. I'm making my way through Edith Wharton's bibliography, one book at a time. I've read several of her works by now, but there are definitely many, many short stories and novellas that I haven't read yet. On the plane ride back from Utah, I finished reading Summer, which I really enjoyed, and I can't wait to talk about it in my May book wrap-up. Let's see, what else can I tell you about New York City? I loved the NYCB performance we saw on Saturday. It was two ballets, both set to music by Bach. The first half was a concerto for strings, and I think it was called Concerto Barocco. The second half was a piano piece, and I think it's called the Goldberg Variations was the title of the ballet, and also the music it's set to. The first half was very intricate, dynamic, almost a little bit frenzied at times. It was super fast-paced, lots of different rhythms going on, different patterns. I was really excited to see it because I think Concerto Barocco is considered like a hallmark Balanchine ballet. There's no plot. It's all driven by his distinctive style of choreography, and I was just dying to see, like a prime example for myself. I've definitely seen Jules before. I think St. Louis Ballet performed it last year for Valentine's Day. Anyway, if you weren't aware, George Balanchine is the founder of the School of American Ballet, SAB, and also New York City Ballet, which is the company. I think he was born in St. Petersburg, and his family moved to the United States after the Russian Revolution. He was a very big presence in American ballet in the 40s and 50s, I want to say. And he is really known for producing a style of ballet that is very athletic, dynamic, also more abstract, maybe a little less tied to the classical ballet tradition, like a jazzy sense of rhythm, a certain playfulness, the speed of the dancers' movements. Sometimes things feel a little bit off kilter. It's also very demanding of the dancers, and I've watched so many NYCB documentaries that talk about how physically challenging it is to dance these ballets. And the caliber of artistry that is demanded from the performers is, you know, something that was really, really riveting for audiences to behold. Anyway, I was just really excited to see that Concerto Barocco is considered like a quintessential Balanchine ballet, and when I saw it being performed, it all made sense. The speed and the intricacy and the complexity of the choreography, a lot of the adjectives that are used to describe Balanchine ballet could all fully apply to this performance, and it was just such an experience to watch it unfolding live in front of you. Everyone was moving so in sync and so precisely and just hitting every note. And there are a million things going on in a Bach strings concerto, riffs and different layers, and it doesn't seem like a piece of music that you can interpret so literally. The second half of the ballet, which was the Goldberg variations, was also really good. There were definitely parts of it that felt a little bit sleepy for me, just because if you've heard the Goldberg variations, there are pieces of that are just super repetitive, and it's just, you know, one man at the piano. It gets a little bit slow. I was fighting for my life for a little bit to stay awake, but the beginning and the ending were just magnificent. Like, it starts with two dancers on a stage. They're kind of stiff and formal. They're wearing period dress. And then it gets overlaid by a group of dancers who are wearing modern dance leotards, and it looks almost as if they're dressed for a rehearsal. And then as the dance progresses, it starts to interweave with dancers that are dressed more formally and become increasingly more formal. The costumes get more intricate, but they're always interwoven with interruptions by the dancers in the leotards. I didn't know anything about the Goldberg variations before I watched it, and afterwards I did do a little more reading on what it was supposed to be about. And it's supposed to be about the history of ballet, looking at different styles of dance and different eras of ballet as it evolves over the years, going from the stiff, courtly, Baroque style of ballet as it was invented through to contemporary neoclassical ballet of Balanchine's day. These time periods are interwoven with each other. It also goes from group corps de ballet dances to the pas de deux. And I just felt like the pair dances were so distinct in tone. While I was watching it, I kept trying to figure out what the message was, and I was like superimposing a lot of my own imagination, a lot of my own interpretation onto the ballet, because it does leave a ton of room for interpretation. I think some of the moments are really quite like sad and nostalgic and like psychologically distant in a very strange way, and then it all comes together again with everyone in the picture. It's like a riot of color and movement, and the costumes at the end are very, like life's a great party type feeling, very, very Bridgerton vibes. And it's really interesting because it is one cohesive piece of music that is driving the entire performance. But there are so many changes and shifts in the mood of the music. And so I think the choreography pulls these emotions out of this piece of music. Oh my god, I've spoken for so long about this ballet. Like, I don't know if you can tell, but I really enjoyed it.